Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be our Q2 2025 portfolio update, and in this series what we do, I just talk about my personal portfolio. Just talk about what we're looking at, what coins we're into, what coins we're not into, what's working, what's not working, different trends, and different just theories as far as maximizing the cycle, which is getting pretty close to coming to an end, right? So we are pretty much starting to prepare for the end game. For me, these are the last 5-6 months. So we'll talk about it. We'll talk about why we think that and just give our overall thoughts on everything as a whole. Okay, so if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So just as a heads up, this thing is going to be all over the place. Going to talk about just different goals, different coins we're into, why we're into, timelines, all that good stuff. Just because, again, in my opinion, at least for me, the way I'm looking at it, things are kind of coming to a close here, right? We are anywhere from 2 months to potentially 5-6 months to potentially 8-9 months, potentially even longer, to being towards the potential top of this cycle, right? The reason it's such a wide variance is because in reality, nobody knows, right? At this point, it can follow the typical cycle, which we'll talk about here in a second. And that's where the biggest part of the emphasis is for me, and that's what I'm trying to focus on the most. But I'm also open to the ideas of other things happening, right? Are we ahead? Can things peak earlier? Can things peak later? Definitely. At the end of the day, we really have no idea, but I am preparing for every scenario. And at this point, there is a scenario where things can peak here in the next coming months, so I'm trying to prepare myself for it. Okay? So currently, BTC is $110,000. We are days away from BTC 2025, which typically a lot of these shows are more bearish, and even typically just this time of the year is typically more bearish. But things have been quite the opposite, right? There's a lot of things in the macro. There's a lot of things going on that are extremely bullish. So will it continue? Will it be a buy the rumor, sell the news thing? We don't know, and in a sense, we kind of don't really care, right? At this point, it's a point of accrual. Our vision is for just looking for signs of the top, which again can come at any time. Okay, so overall market is definitely looking good, specifically BTC, right? This is kind of the hard part, especially if you're alt heavy. Alts have been doing so. It really depends on which alts though, right? Certain alts, a lot of the utility, a lot of the strong layer ones, especially the top 50 guys, they are doing fairly well, right? Especially from the lows about a month ago. Things are looking pretty good, but as far as some of the more sketchier, riskier alts, not so much, right? In some cases, they have seen like a 2x from the lows. Some have done significantly better. Some have done worse. Some are just going sideways. And in reality, for a lot of the alts, especially the smaller alts, it's kind of where it should be, right? Typically, the way a lot of it works, a lot of the alts really don't run up until that pico top. Which, will it happen? Won't it happen? Again, that's another thing you got to kind of decide. I still do fully think there's going to be an alt season. I know a lot of people think just because somebody puts one bullshit theory about memes taking all the liquidity and it's only going to be coins in the top 10 that are going to hog up all the money essentially. I'm not in agreement with that. I still do think that there is going to be a lot of potential with the alts, but it's going to be the right alts, right? So just because there are currently over 1 million coins or different projects that are out, different meme coins and such, that doesn't mean that all of them have to pump with alt season. It's going to be the same as every alt season before, where it's coins that are doing well. It's coins in the top 500, just like it's been cycle after cycle. Yes, even the previous cycle, there were a shitload of coins, and even the one before that, right? So it's going to be those coins that have a reason to pump, whether it's from speculators, market makers, ASIC manufacturers, hardware manufacturers, whatever it may be. I still do fully think there will be an alt season. Will it be a traditional alt season though? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be something where we've seen typically where BTC hits a certain point and that people sell that BTC in order to go into alts. From like what we've said before, I don't see that happening. To me, with all the treasuries, all the SBRs, everything else going on, to me, it's Bitcoin's going to go up. Maybe it'll go up to a certain point and then just kind of flatline, and then the additional money for the alts will be just retail coming in, because as we know right now, it's all institutional money. This has definitely been an institutional bull run, and most likely will continue to be. So those coins that have a high likelihood of having that institutional interest, We already see it with Bitcoin, but there's going to be alts here as well, especially in the coming months as ETFs or more ETFs get approved. We already saw Ethereum. The expectations we're going to have Solana, XRP, AVAX, and such. Those coins are likely going to continue to do well, and coins within that ecosystem will also tend to follow, right? And then retail will also tend to follow those coins, just because at this point, retail's not going to be into a Bitcoin that's already going to be well over 120, 130,000 by the time they're thinking of getting in, right? At this point, they are going to 100% feel like they missed the boat, whereas people with a more long-term vision still see the potential. So this is where you're going to have these companies, these treasuries, you're going to have countries still continuing to buy, and that's where the game is going to be. Right, so one other big metric I like to follow is the overall total crypto market cap, which is currently at 3.43, which is pretty damn high, right? If we remember, the peak was 3.7. Yeah, so in December, 3.7 was the peak, so it's actually not too far off from there. It's within 10%, which is pretty crazy. The Bitcoin dominance is another metric we want to look at. It's at 63.4%, but again, like, I don't think we're going to see, for us to have the altcoin season, BTC dominance definitely still has to go down, but it's not necessarily because people are selling into the alts. I think it's just going to be, again, the additional money that comes in is mostly going to be flowing into alts versus BTC just kind of staying potentially flat after a certain point. Where that point will be, we have no idea. Maybe it doesn't. Again, this is all theoretical, and these are things that you have to kind of see, kind of look at trends, look at what's going on, because you're going to hear all kinds of bullshit all over the place, right? You have to kind of come up with your consensus, like what makes sense to you. I think that's what makes this space so fascinating, is that nobody knows what the fuck is going to happen. You kind of have to look at different data points, different viewpoints, see what kind of makes the most sense, and then 9 times out of 10, that kind of is what happens here, right? I know people are saying like BTC is going to 500,000, all these numbers. Who knows at the end of the day, but you have to have more realistic expectations, especially with things like diminishing returns, et cetera, especially considering how large BTC is at this point, right? Even if it were to double, which I personally don't even think that's going to happen, that's a hefty amount of money to flow through, right? So looking at all these metrics is definitely important. That's where we look at, and a lot of times that's what I base my market predictions off of, right? As far as like bull market, like top predictions, it's based off of their dominance, based off of what I think the overall crypto market cap as a whole is going to be, which, depending on who you're listening to, anywhere from 8 to like 12 to 15 trillion, right? Again, I'm more on the conservative side. My prediction is closer to like that 8 trillion market cap. And then based off of that is how I make a lot of the price predictions for a lot of the other alts, right? It's based off of the overall crypto market cap and what percentage of the market dominance I believe it'll have. Okay, again, everybody has their own strategy with that. That's the way I look at it, for example, and that's why I have the numbers that I do for the coins that I do, right? Again, a lot of it's typically more on the conservative side, but to me, they're very realistic, and I have a high percentage of confidence that they're going to hit those metrics, right? So, for example, with Solana, I don't even know where the listing is at on the desktop. I know on the mobile, in this section where these things are, it does give you the percentage of market dominance that it's currently at. So, for example, Solana is currently at about 2.67. So figuring that, and we're thinking that the overall crypto market cap as a whole will hit 8 trillion. If we think that it's going to do a little bit better, like I personally think it is going to take a little bit more dominance. I think it's going to go up to maybe 3%. So at this point, 3% of the 8 trillion gives us 240 billion, right? So that's what we expect the entire market cap as a whole to be. Currently, it's at about 92, right? So at that point, easy math, it's about a 2.5x from here, right? Which would put us in the neighborhood anywhere to 450 to 500, and the potentially more if things get crazier, right? So that's how I tend to do a lot of my coins, a lot of the predictions as far as how high it's going to go. And the reason that those are important to kind of think of is that that's going to help you decide when to potentially exit, right? So at that point, regardless of the timeline, like if we hit a $450, $500 Solana, even as soon as July, I will be selling a pretty hefty portion of the portfolio, right? As the time gets closer, realistically here, that's going to be probably what I'm working on this next month, is just kind of deciding that, right? So as far as if it were to hit early, let's say it does hit it in July, what percentage of the bag would I be selling? realistically, right off the rip, I can tell you it's going to be at least 50%. Maybe as high as 60-70%. And at that point, hitting targets of, okay, we hit 550, we hit 600, another 10%. What other target? Another 10%. What other target? Another 10%. And then leaving a certain amount in case we do follow that traditional cycle, right? So these are the types of things you really do have to start considering, thinking about. But this is why we pick the coins that we did, pick the allocation percentages that we did, all in anticipation of this, right? And so far, for the most part, even as things get closer and I'm kind of redoing numbers, those targets we've had for the past like year, 2 years, still on point. All those numbers are still a point. They're still about the same, especially for the larger holdings, right? The smaller holdings where I only have a few percent, those I'm willing to risk quite a bit longer, right? Just because, again, there wasn't a whole lot of capital invested and there is extreme potential for some of those, right? Versus some of these, the bulk of the money has already been made. For example, when we're purchasing Solana under 20 bucks, under 15 bucks, at 10 bucks, a lot of the money has been made, right? There's not much upside from this point. It's already been done, right? Similar situation depending on what coins you got into at what time. I have the same viewpoint for Caspa also. That's been our best performer at this point. If we hit a 4x from where it's currently at, which is my personal prediction, I will be beyond freaking happy. I know some people are calling for $1, $2 and all these things, and hopefully it does. Maybe it gets crazy, but I'm a little bit more of a realist, right? Again, you have to come up with your own thing, and it can happen, right? It's not even something that's like out of the realm of possibility, especially coins farther down on the list. Solana being number 6, it's going to be very limited in upside. Same thing with like Ethereum. Anything in the top 15, it's only going to go up so much. Even if BTC does go up to 250,000, the overall market cap goes up to 10 trillion. There's only so much room versus getting the coin that's in the currently top 200 and it makes it into the top 50. Massive potential, right? So this is why I don't necessarily want to be too top heavy in any coins in the top, and that's why I did rebalance a lot of the portfolio, right? So a lot of it's going to be timing, and the reason we're saying we're close to timing wise is if we go by the typical cycle, it's anywhere from October to November, right? Anywhere within those 30 days is when we can peak. Currently looking at this Bitcoin cycle chart, they have it somewhere around mid-October being the peak. They're predicting about 220,000 Bitcoin, which is totally possible. To me, that's definitely on the high end. Again, I'm more conservative also, though, right? For me, it's anywhere from 140 to 160, somewhere in that range. Again, hopefully it goes up way higher. But realistically, most of my predictions are more like on the minimum scale, right? If things go beyond bullish, we'll go way higher. Maybe we don't. Maybe we peak earlier. It's hard to tell. But realistically, that's why I'm kind of preparing now. My personal prediction, depending on the coin, and we're going to look at a bunch of coins and when they hit their tops before, basing it off of that, basing on where everything's going on, basing on the possibility of us being ahead of schedule, I'm preparing for July to November. Anywhere in that time frame, I want to have everything liquid. I want to have everything unstaked. I want to have everything kind of ready to go, just in case it's go time. Okay, so we'll look at a couple things. But just kind of be wary of that, right? We are getting close. You really do need to start thinking of exiting. Like, how is your game plan going to be? Are you just going to wing it? Because it's not going to be as simple as, oh yeah, I'm going to wait for the top and I'm going to sell at the top. 90% of people will not hit that mark, right? More than not, what's going to happen is people are going to completely miss it and they're going to round trip, right? It happens every cycle. This time it's different. Something's different's going to happen, like last cycle. For any guys who are here, it was adamant about 100K Bitcoin, 100K Bitcoin, 100K Bitcoin. So what happened? It went up. As a matter of fact, actually, even before then, a lot of people were convinced this was the top. So as this thing was going down, and that summer low, a lot of people sold thinking that they missed it, right? Luckily, it did rebound again in November, like how it should. And again, the rhetoric was 100K BTC. This is the last cycle we're going to have. It's going to continue on. There's no bear market. And a lot of people round tripped, right? A lot of people didn't sell until it was too late, right? Thinking that was going to happen. So just kind of prepare for that, right? It is a possibility. It may happen. It may not happen. Just have these price targets in mind. Like for me, I'm going to be more than happy at selling at these targets that I have. And at this point, I know I'm not going to hit the tops, right? With a lot of these, I'm not going to hit, especially a lot of these bigger caps with Solana. I'll be selling a big chunk at 500, and there's a possibility it may go to 700, may go to 800, may go to 1,000, right? I'm going to keep little bits and try to keep all the way up, and I'm going to do different calculations to determine, am I going to sell 50%, 60% at 500? It's going to be different factors. It's timing, it's speculation, it's what's going on, a lot of factors, but just having these different scenarios ready to go just in case, right? So a lot of stuff to think about, and in reality, it is something you got to consider, guys, because it can literally make the difference from, you know, having a 6-figure portfolio and a 7-figure portfolio, even on the small end, right? So I'll give a lot of the coins I'm into. I'm not going to give portfolio numbers as far as like figures, but just understand that a lot of this was built in-house, right? A lot of this was done from mining revenue and just growing from there, right? Essentially, most of my contribution has been paying the electric out of pocket for these past 2.5+ years and just accruing, right? And it's crazy to think of where we're going to likely be at, right? It's just crazy. Don't ruin this opportunity, right? This has been a big opportunity with just being patient, setting goals, doing the damn thing, and getting through it. But as far as the portfolio goes, for the most part, it's pretty much where it's going to be at, right? There's not a whole lot of things going on. There are certain coins that as they go up, they were at one point a tiny portion of the portfolio. They grew it to a lot bigger, and then we're going to kind of rebalance a bit, right? For you guys who have been following the posts, saw Natix, it's done a 3x from the lows, while a lot of the other coins are kind of slumping. So for me, this is definitely an opportunity to take some profits, especially right now when there's other coins that are in the portfolio that maybe we're a little bit more bullish on and that are currently slumping, and then go into those. So like when I'm taking profits, when I'm doing this, I'm not doing it and then blowing the cash. We're doing it just to reinvest into other coins, either waiting for the right time, or if right now is a pretty decent time, we're going to just do it now. So in the case of Natix, for example, I did sell off a good chunk just because we did buy a decent sized bag back at the lows. And then currently, for example, we rolled pretty much all of it into Geode. Geode is one that I am also bullish on. So a lot of that stuff I talk about, I'm mining it because I'm bullish on the potential there, right? So same thing with GeoNet. So currently right now, we have been waiting for under 20-cent Geode for a long time. For you guys who have been following these portfolio videos, have been wanting to DCA into it for quite a while. But it just was hard to finally get it to a point where I wanted to DCA, and currently it finally did, right? If we kind of look at it, even just glancing at the chart, right, you can see that this like 19 to 20 cent range is a strong support. Last time we were this low, we have to go back to September 2024, right, which is quite a ways ago. So for me, again, a lot of potential upside, only $60 million market cap, rank number 657, and then same thing with Natix. Natix has a ton of potential. Even with this little pump, it's only a $32 million market cap, right? $100 million market cap is going to be very possible, potentially 500 million if it takes off, maybe even further than that, right? So, but is it one that I'm 100% confident in? Not necessarily, but it's definitely enough to have a moon bag, take some profits, and just ride the rest through, right? If it continues to go up, it goes to 0.002, maybe take a little bit more, and potentially either wait for dips or reinvest it into another one just to kind of rebalance things, right? So for the most part, that's the only kind of movement really. For the most part, the biggest goal was to consolidate, right? So we did consolidate quite a bit more. The goal is to be in less than 15 positions, right? There's certain coins that at this point have gone down so low, it doesn't make sense to get rid of, so they're just going to hang on to them, right? So again, my portfolio doesn't mean that this is going to be a good portfolio. These are just coins that I'm into. A lot of the coins that have gone up a lot, it's just because they appreciate a lot. Like Caspa, for example, was a coin that at one point in the portfolio was a 1%er, right? And it's the biggest holding in my portfolio, and it's probably going to be for the entirety of this thing, right? It's one that just grew up that amount. It's one that we have taken profits all the way through, right? These 2.5 years, We've consistently taken profits, and at that point, rebought when it was lower. We used it to buy our Caspa ASICs. We used it to invest into other coins on pumps, etc., etc. Same thing with the Solana. Solana is another one that was a heftier position just because that's one we've been bullish on since last cycle. But same thing, when there's been huge pumps, we sell some. When there's huge dumps, we buy some, and we kind of redistribute and grow the rest of the portfolio that way, right? So everybody's going to have their strategies. Some make it this complicated, some don't. But you can see the percentages there. It's 31% of the portfolio is Caspa. And again, this is the bull market portfolio. This isn't the whole thing. The reason the big void here is Bitcoin. For me, Bitcoin is not at all in this portfolio just because that's a long-term portfolio that's not specific to a cycle. It's just similar to like if you guys have IRAs, you invest in the S&P, you do like bi-weekly buys or monthly buys no matter the price. That's what BTC is at this point for me also, right? So I'm not even factoring that into this thing because that one is just going to be stacking for probably the next few cycles, not even just this cycle or next cycle, the cycle after. It's, to me, I think $1 million BTC is inevitable, whether it happens next cycle, the cycle after that, or the cycle after that. It's one of those things, right? So you're not going to see it reflected here. So Caspa's 31%, Sol 21%. Helium is one that has gone up a lot just because we did get rid of all that mobile. We bought some of the dip, so it's now almost 10% of the portfolio. Cadena is 8%. Alf is 6%. CKB is about 7%. Natix went up quite a bit, and even after selling and redistributing some, it's still about 5% of the portfolio. It did have a nice little run. And as far as the rest of them, Geode is about 2%, Atlas is about 1.9%, Honey's 1.69%, Demo's 1.56%, and the rest are 1% or less. Handshake, Nexa, Alio, Iron, and Radiant. The rest are zeroed out, right? So there was definitely consolidation going on. And then currently, as far as the DCA plan goes, because that's been the main thing, right? We've been DCAing, we've been unplugged for the big boys for the most part of this year, right? Just because of my electric rate going up and then the double whammy of that and the price action going down. What are plugged in are the small guys, right? So like the little Jazz Miner, the little Alio ASICs, the AlphaPex, the DG Home 1, and then all the DPIN devices, right? Those are the ones that are continuing to stack. And then I'm using some of the revenue from those, like for example with the Jazz Miner, into DCA into the coins that were currently there, right? You can't see EW's not here, and it's just because we did finally make the decision to sell it into one of the other ones. Same thing with Doge. I don't necessarily see a ton of upside with Doge, so I'm using it to DCA into these coins that have smaller allocations, which that's going to be the goal right now, is focus on the smaller little guys, the guys who are 2% and less, to grow those right now while they're still super low, right? Because for the most part, I'm not going to be buying Solana, although realistically I should have, right? In reality, the play, a lot of the coins I've been accruing are in the Solana ecosystem, specifically these DPIN coins. Specifically like Honey, Natix, HNT. In reality, part of the play could have been to buy Solana when it was like $90 and now 2x, while some of these haven't, right? Honey has been kind of stagnant. Demo has been pretty stagnant. Geode has been stagnant, right? So realistically, a better play would have been to DC into those, let that 2x, and then now sell that Solana to buy those coins, right? Just because that's been kind of the play, is when times are tough, the first things to pump are the hype coins and utility coins, right? So in case you haven't noticed, it's just everything throughout this bear market has been rotations of capital, right? So then as those pump up, as Solana is now at 178 or it goes up to 200, 250, what happens then? People take profits and they go into the next category. So the top 50 to 100, then the next category. And then it could be memes, can be DPIN, can be this, and can be that, right? It's all just rotations of capital, right? Another glaring difference. Again, we got rid of a lot of the Web3 gaming coins. The only one that's still left is Atlas. Main reason is just because at this point, there's clear winners, right? At this point, for like first-person shooters, it's going to be guns. Or off the grid is the game, guns is the token. Atlas to me still has extreme potential and extremely underpriced, so that's why it is there. As far as why I don't have any guns and off the grid, because it is available to purchase, The tokenomics are horrible, and realistically what I'm waiting for is mainnet to come to start selling these NFTs, which should be here in the next few weeks, hopefully. OpenSea should open up. They're going to open up the marketplace there so you can directly sell the NFTs, and that's where the money's going to be made with this thing, right? So realistically, it's people who have been playing it from the beginning, right? If you buy the little skins and all those things, those are appreciating like crazy. So currently they're transitioning to mainnet currently, and this little dashboard that we have here are from sales on mainnet already. And it's looking pretty damn good, right? So just rough mathing it, it's probably gonna be like $2,000 to $3,000 worth of NFT sales once that thing goes live, right? Even just looking at like one of the skin packs, right? This is one of the ones where you're buying the battle pass or whatever. This was the third one, I believe. This is the first one I got into, and even looking at some of the sales right now, it's pretty ridiculous, right? So like the average for just this thing is near $400. Other parts in this kit are around the same, $350, etc., etc. And again, at this point, we have a ton of these things, and it's crazy. Here's another one. This one you got if you just played the beta. If you got into the test and you played, you got this thing for free. Again, $280 for that thing. $74 for a stupid little shirt thing. Again, this is going to be where the money's going to be made. With this game, we'll see how the tokenomics go. Most likely what I'll end up doing is just whatever revenue's made here, literally as soon as it's open, I'm probably just going to dump all of it and just put it into the guns token and just let it ride, see what it does, right? At this point, it's who knows. But that's kind of the play there. But for the most part, as far as the portfolio goes, again, it's pretty much set. At this point, we're pretty much in cruise control, going to be adding to certain positions and then kind of degenning from here, right? At this point, there are going to be new coins. It is going to be degen time pretty soon. If you're in the trenches, you kind of already know. Memes have definitely been picking up again. They're going to pick up on Solana. They're going to pick up on Sui. I love to degen in that stuff, so a lot of the profit taking we've been doing, we have a nice little stash of dedicated Solana and Sui just to degen, right? Just because this is, for me, is going to be the fun part of the cycle, whether it's like leverage trading or it's doing that, this is the time to kind of do that kind of stuff. I wouldn't necessarily advocate for it unless you know what you're doing, right? You have to really be in tune with the market and familiar with the market, knowing how to play the game, etc., etc. But for me, we're entering that phase of the market. The one thing we're not going to focus on too heavily is the mining aspect. Why? Just because, again, to me, for the big boys, I'm not interested in paying crazy prices for these larger ASICs, right? Like we mentioned, our goal was to make our final decisions for whatever big boys last September, October, and we did, right? We made our last purchases there in anticipation of what's going on now. So at the moment, we don't really feel it. Like a lot of people have been mentioning, oh, well, you know, these are still bear market prices. I mean, to me, like $9,000 for an L9 or a script ASIC isn't necessarily a bear market price. That is a bull market price. Same thing with the top of the line Bitcoin air-cooled ASIC, that's 21XP, being like $7,000. That's not a bear market price, right? Especially when there's probably not going to be a ridiculous amount of upside. Like, yes, it can definitely go up, but again, if we go by the typical cycle, where are we likely to peak at? In these next 5 to 6 months. That's not really going to be enough time to maximize your return on investment if things play out. Like, if you're a person who believes that the 4-year cycles are done, it's definitely not going to happen, which it does seem like it's not going to happen for BTC, or at least maybe as significant, but I think it still is going to be for alts, right? Which is where most of the interest for the ASICs are going to be. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't buy these smaller ASICs. Like that, like I mentioned, is going to be more of my interest. Getting just, smaller slices of the pie with whatever little at-home guys, something that's only a couple $1,000. But as far as like buying an L9 in anticipation of, mining through the bear market, this for me is not going to be the time. And with the machines that are out now, to me, I don't have a lot of interest, right? Especially with how high the hash rate has gone on script. For me, it's not very appealing to start from fresh at this point. If you've already been mining and you got yours back last September, chances are you're going to be in a very good position to at least make that return and then continue to mine even beyond, right? So at this point, again, you want to be as efficient as possible. But for me, any big ASICs I'm purchasing, it's because I'm going to be mining in the bear market. And at this point, I want more efficiency than what's currently there, right? mining, you have to, especially if you are planning on doing it long term, you have to have a big advantage, right? Those were the things we saw when we mined this previous bear market. Is we looked for those signs. We looked at which ones are likely to have the longest lifespan of being able to mine, right? So like, for example, our big appeal with like the KE3 and the K7 and such is because they were such a significant upgrade in efficiency over the previous gen that potentially we would have some longevity there, and that did kind of play out, right? So like for me, when I see these script ASICs and I see how much the hash rate has gone up, I don't want to be in the field with them in the bear market, right? Realistically, I would rather wait if it happens, which it may or may not happen, if there's a significant difference in efficiency going forward. Let's say 12 months from now, we do have a machine that now has twice the efficiency of all of these previous machines. That's what would be more appealing for me. But for me to get a machine like the DG2, which is only going to be not that much more efficient than an L9 that's been out for going on, what, like 8 months or so, not very appealing, right? I want something to differentiate me from everybody else, to have that advantage. In this case, an efficiency advantage, because again, when shit hits the fan, and we're in the bear market, efficiency is 100% king. Efficiency is going to be the difference between you being just break even and a $4 a day loss, right? And at this point, like, yes, script was a big one this past bear market, but because of how much hash rate has gone on, you're going to be only competing with those guys, right? At this point, you need to be more efficient than this new gen in order to be ahead of all of them, right? On top of having a lower power rate. Okay, so just that's the way I'm looking at it. Maybe it doesn't play out like that. Maybe the Bitcoin cycle is fully done. Maybe we'll just continue past it. But I'm planning for worst case scenario, and we'll deal with it as we come, right? Let's continue down. So let's look at the tops of some of these coins. We already kind of went over BTC. This is where it does get a little bit interesting as far as why we're so big on following potentially where the cycle is going to be, because a lot of them did tend to top around the same time, but not all of them, right? So this is why we're preparing for any case scenario, whether it's we peak early, we peak later, we're just going to kind of get ready for those things, right? As we look at the majority of them, though, a lot of them did peak around the same time. It was around that same week in November. Solana, for example, was November 6th. AVAX was a little bit later. Theirs was November 22nd. And for example, if you would have sold November 6th, if you would have sold your AVAX then, that was a big difference, right? November 6th, it was $78 versus $134, right? Massive difference in a couple of days. And this is where the mindfuck comes in, right? Because again, same thing, like you waited, like, oh, it's going to go higher. There's a FOMO coming in. There's some big announcement you think is going to happen, is going to pump the price, and then you keep waiting, and then now you're like, oh shit, it's back down to $86. I'm just going to dump it now because it's going to go lower, right? And then a few weeks later, it goes back up to $120. This is why it's going to be so hard to hit the top, and this is why it can make such a massive difference when you exit. You got to like mentally prepare yourself that you're probably not going to hit this top. Maybe, hopefully you do in some of them, maybe not all of them. But this is where the mindfuck happens, because let's say you have 50K worth of AVAX. At this point on November 6th, right? If you would have waited a few weeks, it would have been 6 figures worth, right? This is where it's going to get tough. This is where it's going to be hard, and this is why it's important to kind of set targets as far as what you want to do, right? Like, do you have a specific target for, like, oh, once I hit $80, I'm going to sell 50%. If it hits $110, I'm going to sell another 20%, and then I'm just going to let the rest ride until where I think the top may be, right? So it's going to be dependent on how much you have of that coin, how much you're already up on that coin, right? Because again, if you're a person who bought AVAX for this cycle at like $50, you want to get at least like a 3x from it, right? So you're going to be more likely to hold. But if you bought when you should have been buying and it was like sub $10, you're fine whether it's $100 or $120. It's not that big of a deal, right? Because the majority of the money's already been made. You're going to be more than content with that point. So a lot of it's going to be perspective, how early you got in. Like, there's a lot of factors that come in play here. But again, everybody makes it sound so easy that, oh yeah, I'm going to sell the top, but it's going to be hard, especially because not all the coins peak at the same time. Even the larger coins, like yes, there's going to be variations between like definitely smaller cap coins because again, it doesn't take a lot of capital to really have a major effect on the price, but like Cardano is a good example, right? It was one of the top coins and they peaked extremely early. Their peak here was back early September, late August. Okay, that's when it was like $2.80. If you're a person who's waiting for it, you're holding on, and you waited until like when the other coins were pumping, November 18th, November 15th, it was $2, right? Again, if you're a person who had a massive bag of this, difference between $2 and $3 is pretty significant. Doesn't sound like it, but per coin, and you were stacking back when it was like sub 10 cents, it's a pretty big difference, right? So this is why you kind of have to have different strategies, different price points, different like scenarios, like, and just be ready for it because it can happen early, right? This is a great example of one of the top coins last cycle that peaked extremely early in comparison to the others. You're going to have some that peak early, you're going to have some that peak later. And this is why, like, ideally starting July, I want to have everything liquid. Like, I want to have everything not staked. I don't have to wait a staking period. Anything like that, I want to have it fully ready to go. That's why a lot of these things that have long-term staking, like for example with Demo's the one that I remember most recently where it's like 6 months or something, but it's like if I think we're going to hit the peak before then, I don't want to have that thing locked up, right? It kind of makes no sense. So I'm not a big fan of things that have long staking periods like that, or like that little Aether Edge, that little miner thing. You're not going to get the bulk of your coins until 6 months after that day, right? Which to me, you're going to miss a lot of the top if it happens like it typically has in the past, right? So start factoring those things in because I don't think people are realizing we're damn near in June, right? We are way closer to the end of this thing than anything, right? You really got to start thinking about these things. Ethereum was another one that did peak around the same time as the others. Theirs was like November 8th. So again, theirs was kind of on point. Another weird one in the proof of work world was Ergo, for example. Theirs also was late August, September, which correlated with what, right? And they have a close connection with what? With Cardano. Kind of funny that they also peaked around the same time. They didn't have that run up in November like a lot of the others. Again, it was like half the price of what it was. Okay, so you want to look at these trends, look at these correlations, because typically it'll be that coins in that ecosystem, coins that have affiliations with them, and then it can also be trends, right? It's going to be, again, these rotations of capital that we've seen these past few years where it's this thing pops off, this thing is hot. Like the one that stands out to me last cycle was when Facebook changed their name to Meta. So then what happened? All the metaverse coins, Sandbox, and all those all had a pump out of nowhere right at that point, and that was their peak, right? So that's why it helps to kind of limit the amount of coins you're in so you can be in those ecosystems. You can kind of see the signs like, okay, this is getting kind of toppy. And like we've mentioned before with a lot of the deep in coins, it was December 2023, I believe, where all of them all pumped at the same time. Honey, Demo, Helium Mobile, all those randomly peaked at the same time. We've seen that with the GPU coins, the proof of work coins, also the same thing. They also had a little bull market in their own time. All of them, for no apparent reason, just all peaked at the same time, right? Because again, you're gonna have different parties, different entities picking different exit times. Where they are, again, it's market makers, hardware manufacturers, the cycle, some bullish news they got this approval, whatever, right? So just pay attention to those things. Flux is another curious one because they had a second peak quite a bit farther down, right? So they did actually also peak in November 2021. They went up to $2.64. And this is one that in May, when a lot of the others peaked, this one did not, right? It was only at 27 cents. It had its real peak in November like the others, but then had a resurgence in January and actually had their peak was here. January 3rd, it hit over $3, right? So again, another one with very curious timing, which is weird, right? This is why it's unpredictable. It's hard to say definitively, like, okay, definitely October 11th, 2025, I'm going to sell 100% of everything. I'm going to nail the top. It's just not going to be that easy, right? It's, again, set goals, Set those price targets. Some will, the majority of them will. Like a lot of them do have confluence with that first, second week in November. Those first 3 weeks, anytime from like November 7th to the 21st, is when a big chunk of them did peak, right? So again, if we go by the typical cycle, maybe it's sometime in October, but maybe it's sooner, maybe it's not. Maybe all these things with Bitcoin change the cycle completely. Maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe we just go down only after July and we don't peak until January 2026. That's another theory out there. Who freaking knows, right? But at this point, regardless of when the full peak is, I have my price targets. I have my overall price target that I want to hit for the entire portfolio, that if I hit that, I will be extremely happy considering what we invested, period, right? It's going to be pretty substantial, and I'll be more than happy even if I miss the top, right? Even if I end up selling 100% of my Solana bag at 550 and it actually does hit a point of like $900. Still going to be happy with that, right? I already set my targets. I already set the amount. I'll be more than happy with that, right? So think about these things, guys. Look at different strategies and follow different things. Don't get yourself stuck in this echo chamber of following just one person. Like, look at different perspectives. Look at the Moon Boys, look at the Bears, look at everything, right? Definitely open your eyes to the crypto market as a whole, because in case you haven't noticed, that's how you make out the best. Whether you're mining, you're buying, you're whatever, looking at overall trends, right? Timing is everything. Strategy is everything. Okay? It's not as simple as plug in a thing and sell your coins every day. It's not like it used to be, right? If you want to maximize this thing, look at different data points, look at different things. X is an excellent tool, right? You can follow me at Mining Stacker, shameless plug there. But again, follow a lot of different people, right? To follow the Moon Boys, follow the Bears, follow people whose ideals you kind of reflect with. Like one we've mentioned now for years is Tech Dev, who started the whole thing with believing it's a liquidity cycle, which is a trend that has taken off a lot recently, right? Which kind of has me like a little more hesitant. Another X account I love is also Caleb Franzen. He talks more of the macro of things going on, and he's been right for these past like year and a half, right? A lot of his perspective has been excellent, and even regarding like the M2 supply charts, very good post here. Again, a lot of different things. Don't put yourself in that echo chamber where you're believing one thing. Like even when we've talked about kind of my theory and where I thought things would go, we'd have people arguing it. Just because even, for example, with the first interest rate drop we had, everybody's prediction was, oh, well, the first time that happened, it led into a recession. Everything went down. And then looking at everything else, it didn't make sense, right? It just didn't make sense, even listening to all these people on whatever platform, whatever, however big they are. It just didn't make sense, right? Looking at other data points, you have to go with your gut. You have to go with what makes sense to you, because at the end of the day, we don't freaking know. We have no idea. We're kind of playing this game. For me, again, I have my viewpoints. I'm looking at different things. I'm looking at different confluences. I'm looking at all these data points. And in reality, it may happen, it may not happen. But at this point, even if there's only like a 10% chance of things repeating, I'm going to take that chance 100% of the time. Like, we've seen it happen before. We've seen the trends, especially these past 2.5 years. And a lot of people are bearish. Oh, this is that. It's again, we've heard that for these past 2.5 years. That's why, not to be mean or anything, but I don't give a fuck, right? I have my viewpoint. I have full confidence in my viewpoint, and that's what I'm basing a lot of things on, right? And that's how you kind of have to treat it, because if you go with the narrative, go with the FUD, you're going to go right down the toilet just like those guys did, right? A lot of times they're angry because they missed out. They missed this missed that, just because it was easier to follow the narrative and say, oh, mining is dead, crypto's dead, we already peaked last November, etc., etc., etc. We've heard it. If you've been in the space this past cycle, you've heard it over and over and over again. Yet what continues to happen, right? All the signs are there. Look at the data. Look at what's going on. Look at who's stacking. These institutions are stacking all this damn Bitcoin for nothing. Same thing with all these alts, these institutional alts. These ASIC manufacturers are going to have a reason to pump a lot of these coins. Market makers are going to have a reason to pump a lot of these coins, even a lot of these smaller cap coins, which again, a lot of the exchanges like XT.com, previously ZegX, previously some of these others, They're going to pump the shit out of these little mining coins. Like if there's an incentive for it to happen, it's probably going to happen to some extent, right? So again, as long as it has a narrative, it's going to help if you pick the best one in that niche, right? So follow your coins, look at what's the best in that category, like, and that's why I have my portfolio set up the way it is. Like, it looks kind of scattered all over the place, but it's strategy to it. I only want a certain amount of coins in the top 50, which in this case it's only a handful. I want some coins in the top 100, 150, 200, and then some degen coins that are out of the top 500, right? It's all percentages. I'm going to weigh heavy on coins that I have a higher confidence in, and that's how I'm going to play it, right? So it's totally up to you. Again, it's not for everybody. This is definitely specific to me. That does not mean these coins are going to do the best. But this is what we've been mining, what we've been stacking, what we've been accruing, and this is my game plan, right? Again, you have to come up with yours, do what makes sense to you, and follow your gut, okay? We're getting close to the end of this thing. Be ready. Don't get caught up in different things. Just have that strategy ready, right? Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? What are you guys doing? Are you guys also kind of like in cruise control? You're kind of like ready for this thing? Let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I am out.